NBA, full slate of games tonight. Colin right, Colin wrong, top of next hour. And let's bring in Ric Bucher, Fox Sports NBA analyst, covering the league since the early 90s. So I was saying, if you want to be a villain, that's fine. I mean, in wrestling, you had Rowdy Roddy Piper was a wrestling heel. That's, the greatest wrestling heel ever. I'm all for it. But if you choose that, right. there is shrapnel with it. And, KD left a great culture, and Kyrie has been difficult, anti-vax. And it's funny, I said they're succeeding almost despite themselves. What did you make of the Kyrie sort of meltdown with the fans, or was it a meltdown to you?
No, I don't know that it was a meltdown. I think it was up to character. I mean, look, he had issues and has had exchanges with the fans in Cleveland. This is not the first time that he's had an exchange with the fans in Boston. What I don't understand is, and it gets to sort of your villain theme, is Kyrie, if you want to be a villain, be a villain. Embrace being a villain. KD, same thing. What is off-putting or confusing is that they don't see themselves as villains. Or when Kyrie's like, hey, you know what, I'm not going to take that, and I'm going to look them right in the eye, and I'm going to give it right back to them. And I'm like, okay, well, then what is giving them the double bird behind your head without turning around? What is that? That's not villainous. That's like the Home Alone villains. Like it's Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. Like, you got all these tricks that you're trying to pull, and you're not quite pulling them off. And that's the other part. If you're going to be a villain, you have to win, and you have to win pretty consistently. And that's where Kyrie and KD are coming up short. They don't really scare you as villains. I don't know that the Boston Celtics fans, particularly after Game 1, are looking at this and going, oh man, we better not give it to Kyrie again. We better not get his feathers ruffled, because we could end up, not losing the game. So I would expect there's going to be more here. But Kyrie confuses me. On one point he says, wants to tell us he's enlightened and he's all about the common man, and then he gets in the gutter with the lowest common denominator, and that doesn't equate with the way Kyrie, I think, the way he wants us to perceive him overall as a human being.
So the Warriors are interesting. I compare them to the LA Rams in that smart GM, smart culture, smart head coach, and they just make a bunch of stuff work. They draft and develop. Clay's off an injury. Steph can come off the bench. Jordan Poole was a 28th pick in the draft. Draymond's better this year than last. And everything just kind of works. But it is an expensive team. It is an older team. Clay's coming off an injury, and Phoenix is rolling. You're somebody in the Bay Area that sees them. You tend to be probably more critical than most of us, because you see the warts. Now they look great this weekend, but what do you make of their small lineups? What do you make of this whole operation right now?
Well, one, the reason for that culture and the heart of it is the chemistry and the coming up together of Draymond and Clay and Steph. And that has just infused everyone else who comes into that organization. And Steph coming off the bench is much like Greg Popovich, and the way Steve Kerr bringing Steph off the bench is much like the way Greg Popovich would handle Tim Duncan. And he would do things and you'd think, well, you can't treat a star like that. And yet it set the example that, no, first and foremost, we're going to do what's best for the team. Now, you talked about the warts and you talked about how good they looked in Game 1. You're right. What I saw was that Steph Curry is not anywhere close to 100%, and that Klay Thompson is not the same. And ultimately, it did not matter because of the job that they did collectively, particularly defensively. They came into this game and said, Denver, you're going to have to beat us shooting the three. And we're going to take away the back cuts.
Yep.
So Jokic isn't going to be the same playmaker. And through the first 3 quarters, Denver shot 20% from 3. Now, they are a middle-of-the-pack three-point shooting team, but they're better than that. And if they don't, I expect that they would shoot better than that in the upcoming games. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but looking at the way Steph and Clay played, I don't know that it's going to be an issue in this series.
Right.
But they're going to need to be healthier. They're going to need to be able to move better physically than they did or than what I saw in Game 1 for me to believe that they're capable of knocking off the Suns.
So in this Eastern Conference, you have Brooklyn's getting a lot of attention because they're villains, and the Bucks are getting attention because they're defending champs. And then in the regular season, Miami played so good, and Boston got hot. So we're kind of strangely overlooking Embiid and Harden. They're kind of like under the radar, which I think is great for them as they pull off that trade. Now, Maxey, Tobias Harris, it's a work in progress. But I picked them over the Raptors, and I said, in the end, the Raptors will not be able to pull away from them. So you're going to get close games with 5 minutes to play, and I'm going to take the two best players in that spot. Do you think they take a 2-0 lead over the Raptors? And what do you make of kind of a work in progress with Philly?
I would fully expect that they will take a 2-0 lead, but this is the thing with the Philadelphia 76ers is that you're right. When you look at them on paper, you think, well, they have everything they need. And yet we've seen them, take a night off or lose their way or not play with the same consistency or efficiency. Suddenly Harden becomes passive for some unknown reason or just can't hit a shot to save his life. And so that's where I would expect that, but the 76ers have demonstrated to us consistently, whether it was last year or at times this year, where they're their own worst enemy. So that's where, again, on paper, Embiid is a handful. Harden should be that guy that if you're giving too much attention to Embiid, he's going to take care of you. But if you're telling me I'm relying on Tyrese Maxey any more than I'm relying on Jordan Poole, I haven't seen enough of those guys making deep playoff runs to play that kind of role to believe that is going to be the answer. At some point, it comes back to the stars. Steph and Clay, Embiid and Harden. And can they work in this case, can Embiid and Harden be efficient at the same time playing off of each other? That's what we saw with Boston. And that's not what we saw with Brooklyn. And ultimately, in winning a championship and making a deep run, it's not just having the talent, it's having talent that fits and meshes. And the jury is still out on that when it comes to the 76ers.
I thought an interesting was, and I don't see these as title teams, but everybody was falling in love with Memphis over the regular season, and I said, first of all, they're just way they're way too young. I said, second of all, heck, their offense is almost better without Ja Morant, so you got to work your way through that when he comes back.
Yeah.
And because he's very ball centric and ball dominant, and he's great. And you stand around watching him perform, and I've seen offenses like that. But I thought it was interesting. They thought they were going to walk into this thing with Minnesota. It was like Minnesota had such a chip. And are we looking at a massive upset? Because I think Memphis is better, and I think they'll win the series. But it's almost like they came in cocky in Game 1.
Yeah. Well, and cocky not ever having been in the franchise has never been this highly regarded going into the playoffs.
That's right.
They went to the conference finals back in 2012 when Robert Parra first bought the team. They were the 5th seed. They've never been the favorite. And so last year, I did not expect them to fall down the way they did in Game 1, but I suddenly realized, you know what, they've never been here before. They're the favorite at home.
Right.
In front of a fan base that's like, we're the second seed. We could win a ring. Skip Bayless has them in the finals. Everybody is telling the Grizzlies, you're all that. And they forgot who they were and how they accomplished that regular season record.
Yeah.
So, and compounding the whole Ja Morant thing is the fact that he missed, 10 of the last 13 games. And so Dillon Brooks had to step up and be that star. And what you saw is when Minnesota came out feeling good about having beaten the Clippers and with a chip on their shoulder, because you all talked about us celebrating that victory too much, that you saw Ja Morant trying to be the star, and then you saw Dillon Brooks trying to be the star. And again, that's not going to work. First of all, they need to put all their energy in the defensive end of the floor and let the offense take care of itself. Anthony Edwards going off, got Dylan Brooks going, got Joe Morant, all trying to answer. Karl Anthony Towns going off, got Jaren Jackson Jr. trying to answer. It all became an individual thing, and that's not what makes the Memphis Grizzlies great. I would expect they're going to win the series. I would expect they're going to be a completely different team in Game 2.
Yes.
But they've given Minnesota confidence. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Ric Bucher, good seeing you, buddy.
Same, Colin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.